When I first met Daniel in Chicago, I never imagined the journey our love would take us on. I was a 23-year-old teacher just starting my career, and he was a young architect who carried dreams bigger than the skyscrapers he wanted to design. From the very first coffee we shared on a rainy afternoon in a little cafe near Lincoln Park, I knew his heart was something rare. Daniel always talked about life, as if it were a collection of moments we had to cherish, not just days to survive. He told me once, while we were walking by Lake Michigan, "Rachel, someday I want to leave behind something that shows the world how much love can really change a person's life." At the time, I laughed, brushing it off as just one of his poetic moods. But over the years, I would come to realize how serious he was. We married in a small ceremony in Nashville, where my parents lived. It wasn't fancy, just close friends and family in a sunlit garden behind a little church. He looked at me as though I was the only person in the world, and I felt the same about him. Life was not perfect, but with him, it felt close to it. Years went by, and Daniel built his career steadily. We moved to Austin, Texas, where he was offered the chance to work on a community housing project. He loved the idea of creating homes that weren't just buildings, but places of safety and hope. That project became his pride, and I often saw him spending late nights sketching new ideas at the dining table. Then, in his mid-30s, Daniel received news that shook our world. He was diagnosed with a rare heart condition. At first, the doctors said it was manageable, but over time, it became clear that his health would slowly decline. I tried to stay strong, but inside, I was terrified. Every smile he gave me was a reminder of how fragile time could be. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset over the Texas hills, Daniel took my hand. His voice was calm, but I felt the weight of his words. "Rachel, I have a wish." I held my breath. "What is it?" He squeezed my hand gently. "I don't know how much time I have left, but before anything happens, I want to finish building something that will outlast me. A community center for kids who need a safe place after school. A place filled with books, music, and art. A place where hope lives. Will you help me make it happen?" My heart ached, but there was no hesitation in my answer. "Yes, Daniel. I'll help you. Always." From that moment, our lives changed. Every weekend, every free hour, was dedicated to this project. We partnered with local organizations in Austin, reached out to donors, and even hosted small neighborhood events to raise awareness. Daniel's passion was contagious. Even though his body was weakening, his spirit seemed to grow stronger with every step forward. I became his partner not just in marriage, but in purpose. I handled the paperwork, coordinated with volunteers, and sometimes simply held his hand when the stress of his condition became too much. There were nights when I cried quietly in bed, afraid he wouldn't wake up the next morning, but he always did, with that same determined smile. One day, Daniel surprised me by bringing home a sketch of the community center he dreamed of. It wasn't grand or extravagant. It was simple, with bright open spaces, a reading corner, and walls where children could hang their artwork. He even designed a little garden outside where families could gather. "Rachel," he said, showing me the drawing, "this is what I want my legacy to be. Not buildings in big cities, not awards on a shelf. Just this, a place filled with love." The day ground broke on the project was one of the happiest of his life. I remember standing beside him, watching the first shovels dig into the Texas soil. He looked frail, leaning on his cane, but his eyes sparkled like a child's. As months passed, his health worsened. There were hospital visits, sleepless nights, and moments where I feared we couldn't go on. But every time I thought of giving up, I remembered his wish, and I knew I had to keep saying yes. Finally, after nearly 2 years of work, the community center was completed. The grand opening took place on a sunny Saturday morning. Children ran through the halls, parents smiled with relief, and laughter echoed in the rooms Daniel had once only dreamed of. Daniel stood at the entrance, his hand gripping mine tightly. He looked around, tears filling his eyes. "Rachel," he whispered, "this is it. This is what I wanted. Thank you for saying yes." I couldn't speak, because my own tears wouldn't stop. I simply hugged him. Knowing this was one of the most important days of our lives. Daniel passed away a few months later, peacefully, with me holding his hand. It was the hardest moment of my life, but I found comfort in knowing that he had lived to see his wish come true. Today, the Daniel Carter Community Center stands in Austin as a beacon of hope. Children still fill its rooms with laughter, just as he imagined. And every time I walk past its doors, I feel his presence, in the paintings on the walls, in the books on the shelves, and in the joy of the families who find refuge there. Saying yes to his wish was the greatest gift I could give him, but in truth, it was also the greatest gift he ever gave me. Because through his dream, I learned that love is not just about being together in life, but about carrying forward the light of someone's heart long after they're gone. And so, whenever anyone asks me about Daniel, I smile through the tears and say, "My husband had a wish, and I said yes."